3 decades in jail after a conviction based on what is now called bogus science. Today, 48 years old, George Perrot was found guilty at age 18 of unarmed robbery and rape, a conviction based in large part on a single strand of hair. This past April, the Justice Department and FBI acknowledged there is no ability to identify a human based on such evidence, and as a result, a judge overturned Perrot's conviction just 2 days ago. Joining me now is a woman who's been pursuing this case for years, Florence Graves, director and founder of the Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism. Florence, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
What was the evidence against Perrot besides this hair?
Single hair, strand of hair, which they've now lost. There was, the victim testified, and she testified that he didn't do it.
Yeah, but forget that for a second.
Okay,
what was the evidence against him?
There was essentially very little evidence. There was supposedly blood evidence that might, he might be part of a large group. There was essentially almost no evidence.
But essentially it was the hair. The hair and the certainty of the FBI witness that this hair follicle is from the head of George Perrot. Okay, say what you started to say a minute ago. The victim, 78 years old, who knew Perrot from the neighborhood.
Right.
What did she say?
She said he didn't do it. She said she was very clear from day one what the attacker more or less looked like. She didn't have a perfect picture of him, but she knew that he had long curly hair. She knew that he had facial hair. She knew that it was very black. This did not meet the description of George Perrot.
And she said specifically, again, knowing him as a young kid, that it was not him.
She said every time they tried to get her to say that it was George, she said, how could it be him when he doesn't have the hair or the facial hair that I told you my attacker had?
And prosecutors believed, even though he wasn't charged, there were a series of rapes in the neighborhood for which they believed he was responsible. They had a semen sample. Did it match Perrot?
Well, they wanted him to be responsible.
Right. Did it match? The semen sample did not match either. There was a confession where a paragraph was added after the fact.
To her,
After she signed, not a confession, she signed a statement.
Yes.
And a paragraph was added to her, the victim's statement, after the fact.
Correct.
So essentially it was the hair. That's the bottom line.
Bottom line.
Okay, so in the intervening years, the Innocence Project, you, et cetera, and ultimately law enforcement agencies, as I said before, the Justice Department, the FBI, what conclusion did they reach about this kind of evidence, that DNA, that hair follicle evidence?
Well, it's not about DNA because in George's case, the hair went missing.
Okay.
And so they were not able to test it. What's significant about George's case is this. It is the first case that we know of, or that the Innocence Projects know of in the United States, in which a judge has ruled that the science is wrong. The science is unacceptable. Before, they've always been able to test the hair in question for DNA. So they didn't have to decide that the FBI's testimony about hair was...
But their broad conclusion, law enforcement community, just so I'm right, is we acknowledge now that we do not have the scientific ability to match a strand of hair to an individual human being. We can't make that identification. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
So potentially after this, was it Judge Kane who made this decision? Is that the name of the judge?
Judge Kane.
Potentially, this could open the floodgates to people who are in jail for some serious, very serious crimes based upon this kind of evidence.
That's correct.
What is his reaction? What's Perrot's reaction to this news? And by the way, we should make clear, while the conviction has been vacated, the DA, I want to get to this in a minute, may retry the case. We'll get to that. Yeah. What was Perrot's reaction when he heard this?
His reaction was, finally I'll get to go home. He also said, I've been in this cage for 30 years. It's time to set me free.
But what I don't understand, I've spoken to a number of people in Perrot's situation, not as many as you. Is the anger level in him not, I know he's relieved, I'm going to go home, see my family.
Yes.
Is the anger level not totally out of control?
He is very angry. He is extremely angry, and he has a right to be. He has never stopped trying to get his conviction overturned every year. No one would listen to him.
So, and the DA is saying, I may continue with this. I believe I have other evidence. I've read a lot about this, not 1/1,000,000th as much as you. There's no basis to continue to proceed with this. And the DA, based upon the judge's decision, could say we're not going to proceed with this prosecution. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And why isn't he?
Well, he may. He hasn't said. He said that we're going to be looking at it. The DA's statement never addressed the judge's actual decision, which was about the lack of science in the hair testing.
And the judge went on to say, and I'm paraphrasing, which leads one to conclude that there is very likely reasonable doubt or some such thing in this case. One last thing for you.
He said there is no doubt.
One last thing. So why didn't he just overturn the conviction and not just say he's exonerated?
He can't do that. He can overturn a conviction. Well, he may be able to do that, but that would be extraordinary. He has said, I'm overturning this conviction, and then the system has to play out.
Can we do one last thing before you go, which I know, this is this guy Francis Bloom I never heard of, who was the prosecutor in this case 30 years ago. Among other things, he fabricated a confession and forged Perrot and a detective's signature.
Correct.
2 first-degree murder convictions that he was prosecuting have been overturned.
Yes.
One was there for 27 years. Judges have eviscerated him. He's now a practicing personal injury attorney?
Yes, he is.
How and why?
Well, because the Boston Bar Association, when he was reviewed, when his case was reviewed, he had a slap on the hand. And the judge said in George's case that it wasn't that bad, wasn't enough to keep the trial from keeping his conviction going forward.
Florence, thanks for your work, and tell George Perrot the second he's out, we'd love to meet him.
I will.
Thank you so much.